It was late October, and the autumn chill was beginning to seep into the woods. 5 friends, Emily, Jake, Sarah, Tom, and Alex, had decided to take one last camping trip before the weather turned too cold. They arrived at their campsite deep in the forest, nestled beside a small, silent lake. The day had been perfect, and as night fell, they gathered around the fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. As the firelight flickered, Alex, who was known for his love of ghost stories, began recounting a local legend. He spoke of a man known only as the Whistler, who had once roamed the area. According to the story, the Whistler was a hermit who had disappeared many years ago. Travelers reported hearing a haunting whistle in the woods at night, and those who followed the sound would never return. The friends laughed it off as a silly tale and turned in for the night. The forest was quiet, save for the crackling of the dying embers of their campfire. One by one, they drifted off to sleep. In the middle of the night, Emily awoke to a soft, rhythmic whistling. At first, she thought it was just the wind playing tricks, but the melody was too consistent, too deliberate. She nudged Jake, who groggily sat up and listened. The whistling continued, and it was getting closer. Jake got out of the tent and scanned the dark woods, but he saw nothing. He shrugged it off and returned to bed, but Emily remained uneasy. She lay awake, listening to the haunting tune that seemed to circle their campsite. Around dawn, the whistling abruptly stopped. Friends woke up and, still feeling the remnants of unease from the night before, decided to pack up and head home. As they dismantled their gear, they noticed something odd. The ground near the campsite was disturbed, as if someone had been digging. Sarah, always curious, poked around the disturbed area and uncovered a small, rusted tin box. Inside, they found old photographs and a faded journal. The journal belonged to the Whistler, detailing his descent into madness as he isolated himself in the forest. The last entries were frantic, speaking of strange whispers and phantom figures in the woods. Chilled, the friends hurriedly finished packing and left the campsite. As they drove away, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. That evening, as they gathered at Emily's house to debrief, Sarah noticed something odd in one of the photographs from the journal. In the background of one of the images was a shadowy figure with a twisted grin. That night, Emily received a voicemail on her phone. The message was just static at first, but then, unmistakably, a soft whistling began, gradually getting louder. Friends listened in horror as the whistling reached a crescendo before abruptly cutting off. There was no message, no one to call back, just the eerie, haunting whistle. They never returned to that campsite, and no one else who visited ever mentioned hearing the whistling. The Whistler's legend became a part of their shared experience, a reminder of the mysteries that lurk just beyond the firelight, waiting in the shadows of the forest. A few years ago, a group of friends decided to camp in a remote forest area in the Pacific Northwest. It was a popular spot for seasoned campers, known for its beautiful scenery and tranquility. They set up their campsite near a clearing and spent the first day hiking and enjoying the wilderness. On the second night, they gathered around the campfire, telling stories and roasting marshmallows. As the evening grew darker, they noticed that the area seemed unusually quiet, even for the woods. They shrugged it off, attributing it to the dense canopy overhead. One of the friends, Mark, decided to go for a walk alone to clear his head. He told his friends he'd be back in an hour or so and ventured off into the forest. The group continued their campfire activities, keeping an eye on the time. When an hour passed, they started to feel uneasy, but they figured Mark had just lost track of time. 2 hours later, with no sign of Mark, they began to worry. They decided to search for him, calling his name as they walked through the forest. The moonlight barely pierced through the trees, making it difficult to see. They searched for another hour, growing increasingly anxious. Just as they were about to call for help, they heard footsteps behind them. They turned, hoping it was Mark, but instead, they found a local ranger. The ranger explained that they'd received reports of someone missing in the area and were just about to start a search. The ranger joined their search, and they finally stumbled upon a clearing they hadn't previously explored. There, lying on the ground, was Mark, seemingly asleep. When they woke him, he was confused but otherwise unharmed. Mark had no memory of how he got there. He only recalled walking into the forest and feeling a sense of being followed, then suddenly finding himself in the clearing. The ranger mentioned that this particular area was known for strange occurrences, and there had been past reports of people experiencing time lapses and disorientation. The group returned to their campsite, and despite their relief, they couldn't shake the eerie feeling that lingered. They packed up early the next morning, deciding to cut their trip short. To this day, Mark and his friends aren't sure what happened that night. They joke about it now, but agree that something unsettling occurred in the forest that they can't quite explain. The experience left them with a healthy respect for the unknown and a story that they share with a mix of fascination and apprehension.